All right. Tonight, we are very fortunate to welcome Muhtar Kent, Chairman of the Board and Chief Executive Officer of the Coca-Cola Company. Coca-Cola is the world's largest soft drink maker and the planet's most valuable brand. Coke, in fact, is the second most universally recognized term, second only to OK. Sold in over 200 countries, the beverage has come a long way since its original invention as a patent medicine in the late 19th century. The son of a Turkish diplomat, Muhtar was born in New York and raised in India, Poland, Thailand, Sweden, Iran, and his native Turkey. Muhtar joined the Coca-Cola Company in Atlanta in 1978, having responded to a classified ad at the New York Times. That fortunate response led to a remarkable 33-year career with the Coca-Cola system that has included leadership roles around the world, from post-Soviet Russia and Eastern Europe to the fastest-growing markets of Asia and the Middle East. In 1985, he was appointed general manager of Coca-Cola Turkey and Central Asia. He then became president of the company's East Central European division and senior vice president of the Coca-Cola International with responsibility for 23 countries. His next career move in 1995 took him to Coca-Cola Amatil Limited Europe as managing director, covering bottling operations in 12 countries. And in 1999, he became president and CEO of Efes Beverage Group, a large publicly held beverage company with Coca-Cola and beer operations across Southeast Europe, Turkey, and Central Asia. Muhtar returned to Coca-Cola in 2005 as president and chief operating officer of its North Asia, Eurasia, Middle East group. There he was responsible for the operations that included China, Japan, and Russia. Less than a year later, he became president of Coca-Cola International, responsible for all operations outside of North America. Shortly thereafter, in December 2006, he was named President and Chief Operating Officer of the Coca-Cola Company, overseeing all operations of the business, and Muhtar became Chief Executive Officer of the company in 2008 and assumed the additional role of Chairman of the Board in 2009. Under Muhtar's leadership, the Coca-Cola brand is continuing to evolve to meet changing consumer demands. With a portfolio of more than 3,500 beverages, Coca-Cola's variety spans the globe. But its star player is still the classic red can. Coca-Cola now boasts over 38 million Facebook fans, the largest of any single brand, and its innovative and iconic advertising, from "I'd like to teach the world to sing" to the Super Bowl polar bears, continues to delight multiple generations. Muhtar holds a Bachelor of Science degree in economics from University of Hull in England, and a Master of Science degree in Administrative Science from Cass Business School at City University in London. He is a Fellow of the Foreign Policy Association, co-chair of the Consumer Goods Forum, and a member of the Business Roundtable. He is also chairman of the U.S.-China Business Council and serves on the boards of Special Olympics International, Ronald McDonald House Charities, and Emory University. Please help me welcome this global business leader, Muhtar Kent.
Thank you. In case I get thirsty. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all so much for your warm welcome, John. Thank you for that kind introduction. And Donna, congratulations on your election as president of this great organization. It's an honor for me to speak with you in this beautiful, beautiful setting at the Palmer House Hilton here in Chicago. And it's a tremendous pleasure, always, to be here once again in one of the truly, truly great global cities of the world. In the words of Sammy Cahn, made famous by Frank Sinatra, Chicago is indeed my kind of town. You've been introduced to everyone at this long, very long table, but I'd like to recognize three special people that are part of our Coca-Cola family. The first is a new member of our board of directors, a man who has devoted his life to helping make Chicago the great city it is tonight, and he's a good friend, your former mayor, the Honorable Richard Daley. I'd also like to acknowledge one of Chicago's most accomplished business civic leaders, another great friend of mine, the chairman of the board of McDonald's Corporation, my friend Andy McKenna. And finally, another terrific friend of Chicago and Coca-Cola is here, a former bottling partner and past member of the board of Coca-Cola Enterprises, Marvin Herb. Marvin, stand up there. And I'd like to thank all of the wonderful Coca-Cola customers and partners who are here tonight. We appreciate your business, your partnership, and most of all, your friendship. So thank you for being here. As you may have heard, or know, or read, Coca-Cola turned 125 years young last year. In May, we toasted everyone who's been part of that story. A story that began, in fact, on a magical spring day back in 1886, when Dr. John Pemberton, an Atlanta pharmacist, mixed up the very first Coca-Cola. Chicagoans got their first taste of Coca-Cola just short 7 years later at the Chicago World's Fair in 1893. And I think it's safe to say that we started carefully, we started prudently here in Chicago. In 1899, Coca-Cola's offices in Chicago occupied a 16-foot storeroom on Wabash Avenue that had formerly been a Turkish bath. True story. Our people delivered syrup with a small wagon that they didn't even own, pulled by horses, big horses rented for $1 a day. Humble beginning, to be sure, and one we can never, ever lose sight of. And from the very start, our Coca-Cola predecessors, both here in Chicago, everywhere around the world, believed in the simple, but also very powerful promise of this great brand. A brand dedicated to refreshing the world, a brand dedicated to inspiring moments of optimism and happiness, and creating value and also making a difference. And together with close to 300 bottling partners around the world in 206 countries, with 20 million customers that we proudly visit every single week, who sell our beverages, we're now refreshing the world almost 1.8 billion times every single day. We're doing that passionately with Coca-Cola, but also with 500 other brands. And as John said, 3,000 products. And of those 500 brands, 15 of them are now billion-plus brands, in addition to Coca-Cola. And as you know, the world right now can use some refreshment and some optimism and some happiness. We all know that. Today, so much needed in the world, because there are some really significant and real challenges in the world. Uncertainty, lingering confusion among many people, particularly the young, in the developed as well as in the emerging world. And the impact of the economic downturn has been somewhat different in different parts of the world. In many parts of Asia and Africa, they're crisis unaware. Many parts of Asia and Africa, if you travel, most of the people are crisis unaware. The recovery, though, which seems to be taking a few tentative steps in this country, here in our country, also promises to be mixed. And I think this evening, I'd like to focus on three consistent, interconnected themes where I think the whole world needs to focus on how to crack the code for growth. Those three themes are to restore confidence, restore governance, and restore social harmony. In order to grow sustainably, I believe that we need to address all of those three issues of confidence, governance, and social harmony. Here, abroad, public confidence, confidence of everyone walking the streets in institutions, any institutions, are at historical lows. Not just in governments, not just in legislatures, but in business, in education, NGOs, even religious institutions. Confidence is at an all-time low. Many, in fact, around the world, here, developed nations, emerging nations, have even questioned the future of capitalism. The truth is, capitalism and free markets, while not perfect, are light years ahead of any alternative in improving lives, in spreading freedom, in creating wealth, and bettering society. Indeed, the world's strongest, wealthiest economies are often those with the most economic freedoms. Our challenge, therefore, and however, is to make capitalism more effective. And this is not so much about more or less rules, but about having the right rules and the right frameworks. Rebuilding sustainable long-term trust requires us to repair some of those governance models, a task that takes ongoing collaboration between what I call the golden triangle of government, business, and civil society. Protests that we see everywhere around the world, particularly in Europe, Southern Europe, but many other parts of the world, are a symptom of the lack of confidence in institutions and related feelings of, especially the youth, of lost opportunity. So such cracks in social harmony can only be, in my opinion, repaired by growth that has to come with investment, innovation, and job creation. So from a business perspective, what we look for is we look for policies that provide for smart incentives, strip away obstructionist bureaucracies, and reach out to government, business, and civil society in the spirit of both partnership, collaboration, and action. Bold action, courageous action. And for our part, we in business must learn better to work in harmony with government. Because together we have to keep growing. Growth is the imperative. We cannot only tax, cut, or save our way to prosperity. Instead, we have to find what I call the algebra, the calculus for growth, through aggressive partnership between business, government, and civil society, that golden triangle. And right now, today, we've reached a point where many of the old traditional growth models and innovation models are no longer effective. We need to evolve those models to ensure that that word, capitalism, is better connected to society, both here in the West as well as in the emerging markets. And as a result, the regulatory, the tax, the governance, education, economic development policies are being rethought all around the world as we speak. So let's look at a couple of examples. First, Singapore. Long been out front in this regard. Last year, in 2011, the nation's GDP grew over 6%, and it continued to be a big net attractor of foreign investment. Singapore ranks second in the world, behind only Hong Kong, in the latest index of economic freedom, and trust in her institutions is amongst the highest in the world, all in the top 3. And then you can say, well, Singapore is just a city, it's not a state, and you shouldn't count. In fact, I was in the presence of a president, one of the top presidents, presidents of one of the top countries in Europe recently, and I gave the example of Singapore. And then he came out and said, well, Mr. President, to me, he said, you talk about a country where if you throw anything on the street, they'll cut your hands. That's not democracy. And why do you give the example of Singapore? So I'll put that aside. I'll talk about Germany next, second example. The glue. Germany is the glue in straining to hold the Eurozone together today. We read every day. There is not a day that passes that we don't read about Germany. But do you know why Germany is strong today? It's not because of this current government. It's not because of Angela Merkel. And I've told her this. I've asked the same question to her in Davos just 6 weeks ago, so I don't mind saying this here. Germany is strong because of Gerhard Schröder, her predecessor. Because in 2004, that man, Gerhard Schröder, created a program called, in 2004, he created a program called Agenda 2010, back in 2004. It was a huge reform policy, labor laws, smart incentives for small and medium-sized enterprises. It was a radical program, connections between universities, education, and industry in Germany. And as a result, Germany today is growing in a Europe that is not growing. Germany has become the second largest exporter in the world after China, past the United States. And all of that is because of the courageous programs of Gerhard Schröder. He lost the election, but he created a strong country. Chile, number 3, another bright spot in the world, growing last year at 7% on the strength of economic stability, discipline, fiscal and monetary discipline, strong policies, courageous policies, and it is ranked as the second most friendly, tax-friendly environment. Huge investments that have been made in Chile in infrastructure, transportation, business. and emerging as a major center of foreign investment and job creation. And let me tell you what else they're doing. Right across the street from where my headquarters are in Atlanta, in Georgia, they're co-opting, incentivizing bright young Georgia Tech students to look south, way, way south. And together, their business, government leaders are attracting those Georgia Tech, the most brightest and best of Georgia Tech, inviting them to start their own technology and social entrepreneurship businesses in Chile. And they're giving these bright young American graduates seed money, they're giving them space in their offices, they're giving them mentorships in management and other incentives, intelligent incentives. And already a small group of these young people that have moved from Georgia after graduating to Chile have developed a system to help all of the hotels in Chile to use 30% less energy. So we're seeing a lot of innovative economic development policies at the civic and subnational levels. In the US, states that are diverse as Texas, Florida, Colorado, Virginia, Georgia, Delaware, New Jersey are doing great jobs in developing intelligent incentives to attract and partner with business. You know, we always talk about growth at the national level, incentives at the national level. Some of the things that at the subnational level, mayors, great mayors like Rich Daley here, but mayors all across the world, governors, can do a lot, much more, faster, quicker, to attract business, to create the right conditions. In fact, I'm on one of the boards to give some recommendations to the G20 that is going to meet in Mexico in June about how to create growth. One of the recommendations from that committee that I'm a member of is saying not just the government leaders of the top 20 countries, bring the 20 mayors of the largest 20 cities in the world to Mexico, of the largest 20th cities in the world. Take the largest 20 cities in the world, bring their mayors, and let them create, together with business leaders, a manifesto for growth. And look what that will do. Quicker, faster, more effectively. So, I'll give you some examples. In New Jersey, Governor Christie's Business Action Center is a one-stop shop for addressing business expansion and retention efforts in the state. In fact, we as Coca-Cola work closely with them before opening a new LEED certified facility that kept 1,000 jobs in Brunswick, New Jersey. Last year, in December last year, I opened that facility with him. We worked with the Louisiana governor, Bobby Jindal, to open a new $100 million plant in Baton Rouge recently. In California, Governor Brown and Lieutenant Governor Newsom laid out a plan recently. I was asked to review and comment on it and make some suggestions together with some other business leaders. And his plan, that plan, Governor Brown's plan, consolidates all economic development now, small business, job creation, foreign trade, and regulatory oversight, as well as business permitting into one shop, into one single location, one shop. So at the city level, we're seeing innovative policies across many towns in the United States. New York, where government has established more than 40 projects to promote the development of what is called in New York new technology clusters. And in 2011, Big Apple overtook Massachusetts to become the nation's #2 tech capital, behind only Silicon Valley, as a result of those progressive policies. But what's perhaps most impressive about these initiatives is that they are rooted in the spirit of partnership, built on an awareness that growth policies must be market-orientated. And I should also mention that in every nation, state, and local jurisdiction that I've mentioned, we, Coca-Cola, we are creating jobs, stimulating economic growth, investing, hiring, not just directly, but across our value chain. And throughout this crisis, and it has been a crisis, I have always been very bullish on the United States. The current recovery, while not perfect in terms of job creation, has been quite broad-based when you think about it here in our country. U.S. business investment is up 18% from 2009 till the end of 2011. Investment is up 18% here. Manufacturing in the U.S. that a lot of people had written off has rebounded, adding over 300,000+ jobs in the past 2 years. And U.S. exports are growing at an annualized rate of 16%. And labor productivity in the United States, which is one of the most important metrics, is now the highest amongst G20 countries. And as a result, unit labor costs in the United States have dropped more than any other G20 country except Taiwan. So, what's driving all of this? Why is all this happening? Costs are down, making our labor more competitive. We're seeing robust growth in energy that is also helping to fuel jobs, and public investments in infrastructure, training, and R&D are also beginning to spur private investment. So as the world at large is mixed, struggling to reset and start, its number one economy, the United States, has to lead the way. There is no other way that the world is going to come out of this unless the U.S. leads the way. The world needs a strong America, strong American economy, and a strong American policy and diplomacy. Last week, I was on Tuesday and Wednesday, I was in Washington meeting with China's Vice President Xi Jinping, who is going to become the next president of China shortly. I represented Coca-Cola in my role, but also as my role of the chair of the U.S.-China Business Council. I represented and led a group of leading American companies and Chinese companies, both committed to building stronger commercial ties between our two nations. We held a CEO-to-CEO roundtable, 10 CEOs on each side. And then I also hosted a luncheon as the chair of the U.S.-China Business Council for Vice President Xi. He's a pragmatic man, a leader very much in tune with the world way beyond China and the importance of both globalized trade, international trade and globalization, and the importance of developing trade between his country and the rest of the world. And as President Xi understands that a strong American economy is good for his nation and the world beyond, and I am certain tonight that America is going to and can rise to that occasion to ensure that it can lead the world out of this crisis. And there are 6 reasons why I believe that to be the case, why I believe that you must never discount American ability. First, America is growing in population, in demographics. Over the next 40 years, we will add 100 million people to our population. Just think of that, 40 years, a generation. Think about it shorter. Between now and 2020, 30 million people will be added to the population of America. Our fertility rates are the highest in the developed world. And since the creation of the 2 countries, Mexico and the United States, our birth rate has now passed that of Mexico for the first time. Second, linked to that point, we're young. By 2040, short few years ahead, only a quarter, 25% of our population will be over 60. Compare that to Europe or Japan, more than 40% versus our 25% will be over the age of 60. Third, we're multicultural, diverse. Half of the world's skilled immigrants come here. And these new Americans have launched nearly a quarter of all venture-backed U.S. companies. Fourth, we're enterprising. 2 out of 3, 66% of new U.S. jobs are created by businesses less than 5 years old. That's an enterprising country. Fifth, we're innovative. The U.S. produces more patents, more inventions, more IP than the rest of the world combined. And sixth, last but not least, we're generous. The most generous nation. The American ethic of giving, of service is alive and well, with people in this country giving more than $300 billion a year to charitable causes despite the current environment. So these trends, ladies and gentlemen, are not going to disappear overnight. They're ingrained in our DNA. And there's still more reason to be optimistic for the future. A recent Wall Street Journal piece, The Coming Tech-Led Boom, explains why we're on the cusp of 3 transformative technology shifts that could be as valuable in this century as telephones or cars or radio waves. And specifically, the authors point out to the emergence of 1, massive data storage, 2, next generation manufacturing, and 3, wireless revolution. And all these shifts are centered right here in the United States, where we have youthful demographics, where we have cultural vitality, and where the higher education system is the best in the world. And one of the authors is right here with us, right there, Dean of the McCormick School of Engineering, Dr. Ottino. Giulio Ottino. And I don't believe it's just a coincidence that he's here in Chicago, because Chicago is often being called the most American of American cities, and it's with good reason. Many of the strengths of this country are the strengths that are shared with this community. Youthful vigor, cultural diversity, which I mentioned, entrepreneurial spirit, culture of innovation, and generosity, outsized generosity. And these traits of Chicago and your business community represented here tonight are hardly new to us in Coca-Cola. As I said, we go back a long way together, back to the days when we were making deliveries with rented horses at $1 a day. Today, Coca-Cola continues to have a good vantage point to see what's working here, particularly in business that's related to ours. One of the things that we're most proud of at Coca-Cola is the economic value that we create for our customers. From the largest customers, largest supermarkets, to the smallest and everything in between. And here in Chicago, we're privileged indeed to work with customers like Tony's Finer Foods, a local grocery chain that's right here, that's kept growing even in the toughest part of the recession. The owner, Tony Ingrafia, has been in the business since he started sweeping up his family's first store, 9,000 square feet, 900 square meter store, when he was at the age of 13. He started when he was sweeping that store. He opened his 8th supermarket and newest store along with a new company office back in 2010. And he knows his business. In fact, one of the most powerful reasons for Tony's success has been his unrelenting commitment to meeting the evolving needs of his shoppers. Today, 4 of the 8 stores cater to Hispanic neighborhoods in Chicago. And he makes sure that he has the right groceries, the right perishables, butchers who speak Spanish. And he does likewise in his other stores, tailoring them again to the specific needs of the neighborhood. So for our part at Coca-Cola, we are proud to work with Tony, sharing the shopper insights that we give him and we have, and then listening to his insights that he gives us. Because innovation is a two-way street. Innovation doesn't only appear and happen inside the 4 walls of your company. Innovation is global today. In fact, Tony is a member of our Hispanic Advisory Council of Coca-Cola, helping us to make sure we're doing all we can to meet the needs of our Latin consumers. Tony couldn't be here with us tonight, but Vince Gambino, his director of marketing, is here, and I met him just a couple of minutes ago. There he is, Vince. And I can cite many, many stories like that. I was here a year ago when I went to Billy Goat Tavern downtown. I met Sam Sianasis there, Bill, Sam's son, and so we have many examples of this great entrepreneurship, vibrant entrepreneurship inside Chicago. Over the course of the next decade, 2010 to 2012, 2010 being our base, we put together a plan. That plan, similar to the plan to win of McDonald's, we call our plan 2020, vision for and roadmap for winning together with our bottling partners. The words of winning are common, and we intend through that plan to double our business in 10 years, to grow from $100 billion to $200 billion in revenue. It's not a plan for the faint-hearted. As the oxygen, as you go up in altitude, the oxygen gets thinner, and it's always more difficult to generate growth at higher levels. But we do believe that it's achievable. Why? Because Coca-Cola is a growth business with potential to grow in every single one of the 206 markets around the world which we proudly serve. Because the trends we see are favorable for us. Rising middle class around the world, no matter what happens to the current economic environment. In the next 10 years, there will be between 800 and 1 billion new middle class that come into the world. And middle class is a very simple definition for us in Coca-Cola. Families who are able to own dwellings and assets. Assets like refrigerators, TVs, cars, and homes. Second, 700 to 800 million people migrating from villages in the agrarian sector of the world into urban centers. Urban increase in urbanization of 800 million. Just add up those trends, two trends, simple trends, middle class, urbanization, and you have a great increase for demand for ready-to-drink, non-alcoholic beverages, which is where we play. So as we grow our business, we're also committed to strengthening the communities which we passionately serve in every one of those 206 countries, all around the world. Connected capitalism. We know that our business can only be as strong as the communities which we proudly serve. If the communities are not strong, our business cannot be sustainable. Simple formula. And that's one of the reasons why over the last decade, we in Coca-Cola have given more than $3 million to worthy organizations right here in this great market which we passionately serve in Chicago. These include, amongst others, the world-famous Jesse White tumblers, who we couldn't be more proud of. And we're not just writing checks, important as that is. Our company, with more than 2,000 passionate employees in the Chicago area, is directly involved in efforts where we can put our know-how to work for people and families in this community. In the village of Niles, we've also helped build and maintain one of Cook County's largest community rain gardens. Last May, as we celebrated our 125th anniversary, again, some of those 2,000 people that work for us, passionate employees that work for us, associates in Chicago, donated to local residents 125 big rain barrels. And our people have participated in numerous, hundreds of coastal cleanups on the shores of Lake Michigan with people from the Shed Aquarium and others. And we've also got a very strong supply chain here in the Chicago area where we spend more than $2 billion a year, $2 billion a year with close to 1,500 suppliers. And many universities in the world have done studies about the Coca-Cola system. For every one job that we create directly, and we proudly employ 700,000 people in the Coca-Cola system around the world. For every one job that we create, with those 700,000 jobs, we create 10 additional jobs in our supply chain through packaging, through advertising, through distribution, through refrigeration, etc. And it's all about making a difference and creating shared value in our communities. Our late, great chairman, Robert Woodruff, who led our company for more than half a century in the last century, liked to always say, the world belongs to the discontented. And all these years later, wherever I go, and I go to many places every week, every month, wherever I go, I encourage our associates to remain constructively discontent. And I believe that this is one of the great reasons behind the success not only of our Chicago area customers, but also of Chicago itself, this great town. There is a distinct restlessness here, a yearning for progress and a yearning for something better here in Chicago. Being constructively discontent is something in the DNA here of Chicago and that of your leaders. Business leaders, civic leaders, philanthropic leaders, and it's part of what makes this city so resilient, along, of course, with your love for the Cubs. Cubs fans. They must be tough and resilient, right? And you are. Our largest shareholder, Warren Buffett, likes to say always, I love it when he says, don't bet against America. And I couldn't agree more. And I'd also like to add, don't bet against the city of Chicago and its wonderful people. Because if the last 180 years is any indication, your city is only going to get better, stronger, and more prosperous in the years to come. So along the way, as you get stronger, better, more prosperous, if you ever need refreshment, I can provide you with some. I'll be ready for you with an ice cold Coca-Cola. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That is great. All right, a few questions. Muhtar, as I threatened, we have questions for you. Now, you were quite optimistic about the United States, yet Harvard Business School recently released results of a survey on the U.S. competitiveness called Prosperity at Risk. It suggested that many companies view the U.S. as less desirable place to locate businesses than in the past. And The Economist this week, front page cover, had a story that basically said the regulatory environment in the United States was in danger of choking off prospective growth. How do you view the United States in that context? You didn't mention the political environment here.
Thanks, John. I'm glad you didn't ask me the question that some people say. You said recently that it's easier to do business in China. What do you say about that? But I think it's all connected. I think you heard in my talk mentioning that we've absolutely got to clean up our bureaucracy, make it easier to invest. We've got great examples at the subnational level where California now is bringing everything into one shop. Many states, progressive states, are making it easier to invest, intelligent incentives, subnational work going on. And I think we have low-hanging fruit. A lot of easy things can be done to make investment easier, intelligent incentives provided, collaboration on the golden triangle between government, business, and civil society. We have to all learn more from each other. Business, as I said, has to learn how to work better with government. But let me say this. Within all of that framework of having room for improvement, when we compare ourselves to the rest of the Western world, I think we've got a fantastic advantage. Then take the rest of the emerging world, who are learning really fast how to create a better environment for investment. incentives and investment. Because we have to realize one thing, there is not an infinite amount of capital to invest everywhere. And so it's a question of how competitive are you going to be? It is a competitive environment, just like in business. And so mayors, governors, congressmen, senators, administration, everybody have to measure themselves against that one single metric called growth and jobs. Can we create an environment can we crack the calculus for growth? Because in the world today, individuals, human beings, all of us here, we have to grow every day. We have to learn every day. We have to grow every day as individuals. If we don't, we regress. Businesses, small, medium, large, have to grow. You can't stand in the same place. You either go down or you go up. And countries have to grow. And countries that cannot grow, if they are democratic, they have a change of government. If they're not democratic, there's a revolution. That's simple. So I think we need to have subnational, national government be more accountable for one metric that's called growth that leads to jobs. Thank you.
Coca-Cola has a reputation of being an environmental friendly company and an innovator in that regard. Can you tell us some of the efforts you have underway and have undertaken to gain that reputation?
Innovation is something that I also mentioned is no longer inside the four walls of any company. It comes from every direction. It comes from social connections. That's why in your kind introduction you mentioned our Facebook page being close to 40 million. And I think overall, in the world, when you look at innovation for us, we have incubators in many countries like Israel, China, Latin America, Japan, India, where we get innovation. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Our plant bottle, the first bottle in the world for non-alcoholic beverages made out of plants, didn't come inside from the four walls of the company. It came from an incubation project in India, where we were able to convert waste to resource. The best innovation in the world is where you can convert waste to resource. And we took molasses of sugarcane, which is basically thrown away, or at best mixed with other things to provide feed to some animals, but mostly thrown away. And we made that molasses into resin, and resin into bottles, and put our beverages into it, and they basically have the same property as bottles made from fossil fuel. So it's a huge development. Came from an incubation project. Freestyle, which is a soft drink dispenser, whereas original legacy equipment that we have in all our customers dispense 6 to 8 drinks. Freestyle dispenses 100 plus drinks. That came again through collaboration with an inventor here in the United States that invented Segway and invented the first home dialysis machine. So it comes from every direction in the world, innovation for us. And for Coca-Cola, innovation is packaging, innovation is product formulation, innovation is how to communicate with consumers through social media. Innovation is a very wide spectrum for Coca-Cola, and that's why we feel that we have the right model for innovation, which is farm it out to incubation projects. Incubation projects are usually centered around technoparks where this golden triangle of business, education, and government are connected in these technoparks outside of certain cities around the world, like Mumbai, like Shanghai, like Tel Aviv, and they provide us with a lot of ideation and a lot of innovation.
China is extremely important to Coke. Maybe you could give us an idea of the size of your operations in China, and how have you dealt with the issue that's kind of become a focus of working conditions in China?
Well, I'll be going to China in 2 weeks' time to inaugurate, open our 42nd factory, and to celebrate with our 50,000th employee in China. And I think the conditions in China are really, in a way, taking care of themselves in a funny way. And what do I mean by that? Wages in China have grown at an average rate of 18% compound in the last 7 years. So, pretty amazing as it is, the reason why the Mexican economy is doing so well today is because of that one fact. Manufacturing is moving at a rate that you would not believe right now from China to Mexico, because freight costs are going up to the United States, and the labor costs are exponentially increasing in China, and that exponential increase in labor costs are creating conditions that are significantly better for Chinese employees. Now, how is that going to all be sustained is a much bigger discussion, and it would take us all night to discuss that. But actually, China, what's going on in China is fascinating, and there is the gap in China today between labor conditions in the West and the East are much bigger. Inside China, the differences between the west of China and the east of China is much bigger than the east of China and Japan. It's fascinating. The east of China today is so much different than the western parts of China, which are much more poorer. So I think you need to take a regional view rather than a national view in comparing some of these things too.
From what product lines and what geographical areas will Coke's growth come from?
Balanced. It comes from Western markets, Eastern markets, emerging markets, every continent. And if we can't achieve the formula for our growth is a balanced growth. Growth in sparkling beverages and growth in still beverages. Still beverages like Powerade, like Simply Orange, like Minute Maid, and so forth. Balanced. Both have to grow. Balanced growth between Western markets and emerging markets. Naturally, the rates of growth are going to be different, but we will grow in all markets. In fact, if you look at our numbers in the last 8, 9, 10 quarters, we've generated growth in all of our operating regions, and that's, I think, the key to our continued success and cracking the code for achieving our 2020 vision. John.
Thank you. You may not have heard this, but our last mayor was quite popular, and he did a great job of establishing Chicago as a global city. So with your frequent travels and international presence, do you have any advice for our new mayor on how Chicago can continue to compete effectively as a global city?
Well, I think Chicago is already competing effectively as a global city, but I think just unleashing more of the entrepreneurial spirit in all cities. That's why this proposal that we have for the top 25 mayors of the top 25 cities, mayors of the top 25 cities to go to Cabo for the G20 meeting and come out in discussions with business to come out with a manifesto for growth. When you take the top 25 cities in the world, they probably account for more than 50% of the GDP of the world. And mayors can act much more faster, more nimble, quicker, make quicker agreements, bring quicker incentives into play, attract investment and businesses in a quicker way, in a more effective way. So I think subnational is something that we are not tapping into in a stronger enough fashion. And Chicago, I think, is shown how it can grow business, how it can be business friendly, how it can create these golden triangle partnerships as a great city. My city, Atlanta, has done a great job under Mayor Kasim Reed that we work very closely with in many of these partnerships too. So I'm making a call here for more collaboration between at the subnational level, between cities, between states, and business. And one of the things that I did as the head of the U.S.-China Business Council is create seminars for U.S. governors how to attract investment from China into the United States. You know, we talk about a trade imbalance between the United States and China. There is a trade imbalance, 1 to 3. China sells 3 times more goods than we sell China. But you know what the investment gap is between China and the United States? 1 to 14. $100 billion, $110 billion of direct investment from the US into China, and roughly $7 billion from China to the United States. Imagine how much more jobs that US states, US cities can create by attracting Chinese investment. Because we should never be afraid by letting other countries come and build infrastructure and factories. I'm just going to open the 42nd Coca-Cola factory. Can I take that factory and bring it back in a suitcase from China? That is China's factory, not mine. Once you put it in the ground, it's theirs. Just the same as Chinese factories that will come here. They're ours once they're built. Bridges, highways, whatever is built is ours. More Chinese investment is good for jobs.
Before we let you go, I have a few short questions. First, a very personal question, and I hope you can help me out here. I drink 5 tabs a day. Is that normal?
How many?
5. Is that normal, or should I look for professional help?
You're a good man, John.
All right. I think we sell 6 tabs a day in Chicago.
Making tab 10 years ago.
The rumor is that Warren Buffett drinks 15 cans of Coke a day. How many do you drink?
Warren Buffett drinks a lot of cherry Coca-Cola, and I love him for that. And I don't know the number he drinks, but he's always, when I see him, he's always with a cherry Coca-Cola, and there's no better shareholder in the world than Warren Buffett.
What's your favorite Coke product? Coke. All right. Now here's...
And Coke Zero, both.
Gotcha. Here's a chance to settle a question once and for all. New Coke marketing mishap, or was a new Coke marketing mishap or a genuine marketing ploy?
I will only defer to a great Coca-Cola leader, Don Keogh, who said, we're not that clever and we're not that stupid.
With that, I want to thank you for your excellent presentation and your frank comments. Thank you. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Thank you.